The Free Thinker Show. Ignite your mind, challenge the norm.
Okay, so get ready, because in today's deep dive, we're going deep, really deep.
Into some fascinating territory.
Yeah, we're talking all about what happens to men's and women's bodies during and after sex.
It's going to be interesting.
Oh, it is, and we're taking our cues from this really informative video, by the way, for anyone who wants to check it out. Okay, so let's jump right in. Have you ever heard of something called ejaculatory inevitability?
I have to admit, most people haven't.
Right. It sounds kind of intimidating.
It does a little bit, but basically it just means for men, once a certain point of arousal is reached, ejaculation, well...
There's no turning back.
Exactly. It becomes impossible to stop.
Wow, so it really is game over, like they say.
Pretty much.
And physically, I mean, the video mentioned muscle contractions, increased heart rate.
Yeah.
Almost like a...
Like a physiological fireworks display, you could say.
That's a great way to put it. Is that all just like nerves going haywire?
You could say that. Basically, the nervous system takes over at that point, leading to all those physical sensations you mentioned. And of course, the brain is also getting flooded with, well, a pretty potent cocktail of chemicals.
Yeah, speaking of chemicals, that's where things get really interesting, right?
Mm.
Tell me more about this post-coital crash. Is that really a thing, or is that just an excuse guys use?
Oh, it's a real thing, and it all comes down to hormones, specifically one called prolactin.
Prolactin. Okay, so, like, what's its role?
Well, think of it as the body's natural sedative.
Okay.
It's released in men after ejaculation, and basically it promotes relaxation, reduces stress.
So you really do feel sleepy.
Exactly, often leading to that classic I need a nap feeling.
Interesting. But is there an evolutionary reason for that? Why would guys, need to feel sleepy after sex?
Well, some evolutionary biologists believe it goes way back.
Okay.
The idea is that a man is actually at his most vulnerable right after mating. Makes sense if you think about it, right? So the sleepiness induced by prolactin, it could have been a way to conserve energy.
Interesting.
And avoid attracting potential predators.
So it's not laziness, it's survival instincts.
You got it.
I like that excuse.
Okay. But speaking of instincts, the source also mentioned, and this is kind of funny, that men often need to pee after sex. What's the science behind that one?
Well, it's interesting, actually. It's likely a combination of factors.
Okay.
So first, you've got oxytocin and prolactin.
Right, the post-sex hormones.
Exactly. And those play a role in regulating fluids, kidney function, all that.
Makes sense.
Then there's what's called the urethral cleaning theory.
Urethral cleaning, what is that?
Basically, it's thought to be a natural mechanism to kind of flush out any lingering bacteria from the urethra.
Like a self-cleaning system.
Exactly, built into the male body.
Wow, the body really thinks of everything. Oh, you know what's interesting?
What's that?
During ejaculation, did you know the internal sphincter muscle, the one that controls urine flow?
It actually clamps down.
It does. That's to prevent semen from entering the bladder.
Oh, right, of course, because the urethra, it's like a shared space.
Exactly, for both urine and semen.
That's incredible. I mean, the way everything's so interconnected. Okay, so we've covered needing to pee, but what about some of the other physical changes that men experience? I feel like these are the ones where guys might be like, is this normal?
You mean like a sore penis, shrunken testicles?
Yeah, exactly. Those are the ones.
Totally normal and thankfully temporary.
Okay, good to know.
I mean, think about it. The penis has just been engaged in, quite a bit of physical activity.
Makes sense. It might be a little sore.
Exactly. Some tenderness afterward is to be expected. And as for the testicles, well, that's the cremaster muscle at work.
Oh, so they're not actually shrinking.
It's more like an illusion.
Okay.
During ejaculation, this muscle contracts, pulling the testicles closer to the body.
Oh, interesting. A defense mechanism.
Exactly. But they do go back to their normal size pretty quickly.
Okay, good. That's reassuring.
Yeah.
You know what else I thought was fascinating that the source mentioned? That men sometimes get a cramp in their toe after sex.
It does sound a little strange, right?
It does.
But it just goes to show how interconnected our bodies are.
Yeah.
Orgasm creates this wave of nerve stimulation, right, throughout the whole body. And in some men, that stimulation reaches the S1 nerve in the spinal column.
Okay.
And guess what?
What?
That nerve is connected to the toes.
No way. So it's like a chain reaction.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so we've talked about the physical stuff, but what about mentally, emotionally? Because the source mentioned men might feel like almost emotionally handicapped after orgasm.
Well, it's not all just relaxation and sleepiness, those post-orgasm hormones.
Right, there's more to it.
Yeah, I mean, remember that dopamine surge we talked
The
about?
one that makes sex, well, enjoyable.
Exact.
Hard to forget that one.
Right, but like any kind of intense high, what goes up must come down.
The crash afterwards.
Exactly, and that dopamine crash, that can leave some men feeling, I don't know, a bit more emotionally sensitive.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, a little down, maybe even briefly, detached.
Emotionally unavailable, the classic.
Yeah, something like that. And it's different for everyone, of course.
Right.
But it's definitely a real phenomenon.
I can see that. It's like the emotional equivalent of that sugar crash after you have like a big dessert or something.
Exactly.
Speaking of different experiences, let's switch gears a bit and talk about what's happening for women during and after sex.
Sure.
The source pointed out that women don't always orgasm from intercourse,
That's an important point.
which, I mean, seems like a pretty key difference from the male experience.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it highlights,
Yeah,
that while many people might think, oh, orgasm during sex, that's like a given.
right. It's expected.
The reality is it's a lot more complex, especially for women.
Yeah, absolutely. So when women do orgasm from sex, what's going on in the body?
Well, in many ways, it's pretty similar to men. You've got muscle contractions, nerve stimulation.
Those feel-good hormones.
Exactly, all those powerful hormones flooding the system. But the experience itself can be quite different.
How so?
Well, women often experience orgasm as like a series of rhythmic contractions.
Okay.
Rather than one single event like many men describe.
Interesting. And the source also mentioned that women have the potential for like multiple orgasms. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another key difference.
Bye-bye.
Unlike men who usually experience what's called a refractory period after orgasm.
Right, where it's basically like game over for a while.
Exactly. It's difficult, if not impossible, to climax again. But women can experience multiple orgasms without needing that break.
See, that is definitely a major difference.
It is.
It kind of makes that whole like, post-sex cuddle versus chat situation make a lot more sense.
It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But there's actually even more to it than that, than just the physical sensations.
Okay.
Let's talk about what's going on in the brain for a second.
Okay, yeah.
So there was this fascinating study conducted in the Netherlands, and they found that during sex, women's brains kind of entered this highly focused state.
Like they're in the zone.
Exactly, completely in the zone. And what's really interesting is that this intense focus actually sort of dampens activity in areas like the amygdala and the hippocampus.
Which are?
Those are the parts of the brain that are responsible for like processing emotions.
Oh, wow.
So then once orgasm occurs,
Yeah.
those emotional centers come back online, but with this surge of oxytocin.
Which is why some women are ready to like chat and connect after sex while their partners are, passing out.
Exactly. It's like a tale of two hormones, really.
It really is. Okay, but we can't talk about the female orgasm without addressing, the elephant in the room.
Right.
Female ejaculation.
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that's often, well,
Surrounded by a little bit of mystery.
exactly, misinformation, a bit taboo even.
Right.
But it's important to remember that it's a completely natural physiological response for some women.
Yeah, it's something that I think people are curious about, but maybe a little, hesitant to ask about.
Of course.
So what can you tell us about what actually happens?
Sure. So basically, during orgasm, some women release a fluid that can actually vary in amount.
Okay.
And there's been, some debate about the exact composition of this fluid.
Okay.
But some research suggests that it's primarily from what are called the perurethral glands. Perurethral glands. They're actually similar to the male prostate gland.
Oh, okay.
And they're located around the urethra.
Right. The tube that carries urine.
Exactly. So when a woman experiences a more, I guess you could say, substantial release, it might also contain some urine,
Okay.
which I think can be a source of, confusion or even embarrassment sometimes.
Right, because it's like, what exactly is going on?
Exactly.
So it's not always the same fluid. The amount can vary.
Right.
It seems like there's a whole spectrum of what's considered normal.
Exactly. And I think that's the key takeaway, really, is that every woman's body is different.
Right. Of course.
And just like with any aspect of, sexual experience, open communication with your partner is key.
Communication is key. I love that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but are there any downsides for women after sex? Because the source mentioned things like, cramps, breast sensitivity,
Yeah, those are definitely valid concerns.
Yeah.
While a lot of women feel, relaxed and content after sex, some do experience some mild side effects.
Right.
So uterine cramping, that's actually pretty common.
Okay.
And it's often caused by the release of what are called prostaglandins.
Prostaglandins. What are those?
So those are hormone-like substances that can cause the uterus to contract.
Oh, I see.
So the cramping is usually pretty mild and temporary.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the breast swelling that the source mentioned?
Yeah, that's usually linked to, increased blood flow to the area during arousal.
Oh, okay.
And some women actually experience pretty noticeable breast enlargement.
Wow, really?
Yeah, even up to 25%.
25%. That's significant.
It is, but like the other changes, it's temporary.
That's pretty incredible. The source also touched on, like, nipple sensitivity.
Right,
It seems like almost like that oxytocin's a double-edged sword.
In a way.
Great for bonding, but maybe not so great for, like, accidental bumps and
Like,
grazes. Yeah, like you're more sensitive than usual.
Exactly. But don't worry. For most women, that heightened sensitivity it goes away within a day or so.
Okay, good to know. So all temporary changes, but man, it makes you realize just how much is happening
Oh, absolutely.
beneath the surface, stuff we might not even think about.
It's remarkable, really, and it just goes to show
What's that?
that there's always more to discover when it comes to, human sexuality.
Absolutely. Always something new to learn. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways you hope our listeners walking away with?
Well, I think the biggest one is that sex is about way more than just the physical act itself.
Right. It's not just about the act.
Right. Both men and women, we experience these significant physiological and psychological changes.
During and after.
Exactly, during and after sex.
It's like a whole ripple effect.
It really is throughout your entire body and mind. And, understanding these changes, how they differ between sexes, why they occur, I think that can be incredibly empowering.
Absolutely, for sure.
It can lead to better communication, greater intimacy.
Yeah, even a deeper understanding of yourself.
Exactly.
It's like connecting the dots between like our physical experiences and our emotions.
Yeah, your desires, even our evolution, when you really think about it.
It really makes you wonder, like, how much of what we consider to be, our personality or our quirks are actually just
Rooted in biology.
Yeah, exactly. These biological processes that, we're only just beginning to really understand.
It's true.
Definitely give me a lot to think about.
Well, that's what we like to hear.
Yeah,
The human body is endlessly fascinating.
it really is.
And the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know.
It's true. There's always more to learn. Well, on that note, we'll leave our listeners with this. We've explored the science of what happens after sex, but what about the days and weeks that follow? How do these hormonal shifts, these almost like echoes of intimacy, continue to shape our thoughts, our feelings, even our behaviors in ways that honestly we might not even realize? That's something to think about. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.